In this video, we're going to talk about the rarest items to hunt for in Phase 2. Looking at Phase 1, we had titles like the Undying, the Immortal, along with the Plagued and the Black Protodrakes. These were titles and mounts that were the status symbols of Phase 1, showing that you dominated the raid. There were also the Twilight Drake and the Black Drake for defeating the hard mode version of Sartherion, also known as 3 Drakes OS, along with the Glory of the Raider achievements. These were all the rarest, most difficult things to get in Phase 1 for PvE. But in Phase 2, there's going to be a new set of status symbols to show that you dominated this raid tier to show off in Dalaran above the well. And today we're going to go through the top 5 hardest and rarest items to get in Phase 2. At number 5, we have the Rusted Proto Drake. This mount is the reward for completing the Glory of the Ulduar Raider 10-player meta achievement, which involves defeating the 10-man Ulduar bosses in their hard modes. Now, some of these hard modes can actually be quite tough, namely Firefighter and One Light Yog Sauron. The Firefighter achievement is earned from defeating Mimiron after activating his self-destruct mechanism. The self-destruct mechanism changes the fight in many ways. You only have 8 minutes to kill Mimiron before it's a wipe. All vehicles and bots in the fight get 30% increased damage and health, and every 30 seconds, 3 patches of fire will spawn near random players in the raid, dealing 10,000 fire damage per second. It's not just your normal everyday fire though. It actually follows the person closest to it. So if you had someone in your raid who wasn't really good at moving out of the fire, this isn't going to end well for them. These fires continue to spawn throughout the fight, hence the name and the achievement being Firefighter. Generally, the strategy is to stack the fires on top of each other so there's enough room to kite. Otherwise, if the fires are all spread out, you'll inevitably start getting hit by them. Now, this fight was so difficult that Blizzard eventually applied powerful nerfs, reducing the damage of the flames, reducing the bonus damage and health gain from the emergency buff, and reducing the damage and range of a number of Mimiron's abilities. And that is not even including One Light Yog Sauron for that meta achievement, which is One Light in the Darkness. Now, the Yog Sauron fight can be fought with up to 4 keepers in Ulduar, each making the fight easier in different ways. However, you have the option of how many keepers you want to help you in the fight against Yog Sauron, from all 4 to none at all, and each keeper you decline to use, the greater the reward when you defeat Yog Sauron, along with greater the difficulty. One Light in the Darkness calls for using just 1 or fewer keepers, and it is a very hard encounter for a number of reasons. One reason the fight is so hard without keepers is because every 10 seconds Yog Sauron will spawn Immortal Guardians. These melee for about 25k damage a swing against a plate wearer and can only be killed by the keeper Thorim. So that means that without any keepers, you have to actually tank all of these Immortal Guardians for the rest of the fight. However, they deal less damage the lower health they have, so it is a good idea to damage them down to low health. Another reason one keeper is so hard is because of a fight mechanic called Sanity. You start the fight with 100 stacks of Sanity, and throughout the fight you lose it through abilities Yog Sauron casts. Upon reaching 0 stacks, you go insane. For 60 seconds, Yog Sauron will take control of you, increasing your damage by 100% and health by 300%, and when it expires, you just die immediately. That's right, you don't get control back, and you can't be resurrected. It is a pretty brutal mechanic for sure. Now, the only way to regain sanity is from the keeper Freya, who creates sanity wells. Without Freya, you can't let this fight go on too long, or the raid will fall apart by literally going insane. The 3-phase fight is filled with many raid mechanics, abilities, and overall requires players to be very aware of their surroundings, not to mention your DPS needs to be very good to not wipe to insanity. All of that said, getting this achievement is just one part of the Glory of the Ulduar meta achievement, which includes several other hard mode bosses and will ultimately reward the Rusted Proto Drake, an icon of achievement for Phase 2. Alright, coming in at number 4 is the Ironbound Proto Drake. Now, this Drake has to be hands down one of the coolest looking mounts in the entire game, and unfortunately, it's pretty hard to get. It's exactly the same requirements as Glory of the Ulduar Raider 10 player, but this time for 25 player. So that means instead of needing 9 other players to play very, very well, you'll need 24, a much harder feat to pull off. All the save achievements, but even harder. But with it comes an incredible looking mount that will surely be very rare and very difficult to obtain. Coming in at number 3 is the Vanquished Clutches of Yog Sauron. Now, this is going to be a super rare and super difficult item to acquire, but it's also really, really cool. This epic trinket grants you crit and the ability to summon a tentacle of Yog Sauron to serve you on a 2-minute cooldown. Now, this tentacle looks amazing, and every time you use the trinket, you'll get one of 3 different tentacles to serve you: a Crusher tentacle, a Constrictor tentacle, or a Corruptor tentacle. Now, they all have different abilities and health and DPS, and while I would love to get into it, ultimately it looks very, very cool, but at the end of the day, it's not BIS, and it isn't actually particularly strong either, which means this is really mainly for cosmetic reasons, to show off, to prove you acquired it, which actually is very, very hard. To get the Vanquished Clutches of Yog Sauron, you need to defeat Yog Sauron in 10-player mode with 0 keepers. That's right, the hardest 10-player fight in the phase needs to be defeated in order to get this trinket. Just like the Black Drake and the Twilight Drake, though, this trinket is a 100% drop chance if you can take down Yog Sauron without any keepers. And that is a big if, though, since this fight is so difficult. However, you will get a super rare and very hard to get trinket to prove that you defeated him if you can. Coming in at number 2 is the Head of Mimiron. This quirky looking mount is a 310 mount that drops from 0 keeper Yog Sauron on 25 player mode. This will be the hardest fight of the phase 2, right next to 0 keeper Yogg and 10 man, and Yogg 25 will drop the Head of Mimiron 100% of the time when you defeat him without the help of any keepers. This will be a very rare mount that few will have, and when you see Mimiron's head floating above the well in Dalaran, you will know that the person riding it has certainly defeated phase 2. However, there's still one more item that is super rare to hunt for in phase 2, and you probably already guessed it. Coming in at number 1 is Volcanic Hammer of the Ancient Kings. This legendary mace was the first healer legendary introduced to World of Warcraft and will be the most iconic item of phase 2, symbolizing the completion of the phase. This powerful weapon not only grants a ton of spell power, but also the well-known Blessing of Ancient Kings buff, causing healing spells to shield the target for 15% of the amount healed, and with the item level boost to Ulduar gear, it will be the best in-slot healer weapon for the rest of the expansion. And why is it so rare and so difficult to get? Well, it takes 30 fragments of Volcanic in order to create the weapon. Each fragment has around a 10% drop chance off each 25-man boss, and Yogg has a 100% drop chance. With these odds, you can generally expect an average of 3 shards per week, which means it will take roughly 10 weeks to get 1 Volcanic, making it the rarest item to hunt for in phase 2. If you guys like this video, you might like this video shown on the screen, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more World of Warcraft content. I'll see you there.